It was a typical Sunday evening, and my husband, John, was doing some work in our home office while I was relaxing on the couch, scrolling through my social media feed. Suddenly, I heard a loud scream coming from the bathroom. I rushed over to see what was happening and found John staring at the toilet in shock. "What's wrong?" I asked, concerned. "The toilet is clogged up and won't flush," he replied, still staring at the bowl. I sighed. "I'll go get the plunger." I made my way to the laundry room to grab the plunger when I heard John scream again. This time, it was more of a horrified yell. I dropped the plunger and ran back to the bathroom, my heart racing. "What is it? What did you find?" I asked, trying to peek over his shoulder. John stepped back, allowing me to get a better look. Inside the bowl was a mass of something that looked like hair, and I couldn't quite make out what else. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but I think it's alive," John said, taking a step back. "Alive," I repeated, incredulous. How can something be alive in the toilet? But as I looked closer, I could see that he was right. The mass was moving, writhing almost. I recoiled in disgust. "We have to do something about this," I said, my mind racing. "I know," John replied, still staring at the bowl. "But what?" We both stood there in silence for a moment, trying to come up with a plan. Finally, I spoke up. "We could try pouring some drain cleaner down there. Maybe that will dissolve it." John nodded, seeming to like the idea. "Okay, I'll go get some from the store." As soon as he left, I got to work searching online for any clues as to what the mass could be. The more I researched, the more horrified I became. It seemed that what we were dealing with was a nest of some kind of parasite. I shuddered at the thought. When John returned with the drain cleaner, I told him what I had found out. "We need to call a professional," I said firmly. "I don't think we can handle this ourselves." John agreed, and we quickly called a plumber. When he arrived, he took one look at the toilet and confirmed our worst fears. "It's a nest of drain flies," he said, shaking his head. "They lay their eggs in organic matter, and then the larvae hatch and feed on it. It's quite disgusting, really." He got to work immediately, using a special tool to remove the mass from the toilet. As he worked, I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief wash over me. Once he had removed the nest, the plumber cleaned out the pipes and treated them with a special solution to prevent the flies from returning. As he packed up his tools and prepared to leave, he turned to us. "You were lucky," he said. "If you had waited any longer, the problem could have spread throughout your pipes and caused even more damage." John and I looked at each other, both feeling grateful and a little sick to our stomachs. We had never realized just how important it was to take care of our plumbing. As the plumber left, I couldn't help but think about all the other potential problems lurking just out of sight in our home. But for now, I was just relieved that the clog in the toilet had been taken care of. As I waited for my husband to come home from work, I couldn't help but feel anxious about the clogged toilet in our master bedroom. I had tried to fix it myself, but to no avail. I decided to wait for my husband to take a look at it, since he was much more handy than I was. When he finally came home, I greeted him with a kiss and led him straight to the bathroom. "You wouldn't believe what I found," he said as he plunged the toilet. I raised an eyebrow, wondering what he could possibly be talking about. "Well, what is it?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment before finally answering. "A rat, a dead rat." My heart sank as I realized the severity of the situation. "How did it even get in there?" I asked, horrified. "I have no idea," he replied, "but we need to call an exterminator ASAP. Who knows what other critters are lurking around in our pipes." We immediately made the call and waited anxiously for the exterminator to arrive. When he finally did, he confirmed our worst fears. There were several rats living in our pipes, and they had been using our toilet as their personal dumping ground. The exterminator got to work right away, setting traps and sealing up any possible entry points. Over the next few days, we caught several more rats, each one more disgusting than the last. It was a nightmare, but we finally managed to rid our home of the pesky rodents. From then on, we made sure to take extra precautions to ensure that our home remained rat-free. Looking back on that experience, I can't help but feel grateful that we were able to catch the problem before it got even worse. It's amazing how something as simple as a clogged toilet can lead to such unbelievable consequences. Months went by, and I thought I had finally moved on from the nightmare that had consumed my life. But one day, I received a package in the mail that changed everything. Inside was a note, written in my husband's handwriting, claiming that he was innocent and that there was someone else responsible for the murders. He urged me to investigate and promised that the truth would set him free. I was hesitant to believe him, but something in the note stirred a deep curiosity within me. I couldn't let go of the idea that there was more to the story. With a mix of fear and determination, I began to dig deeper into the case. I visited the families of the victims and pored over police reports and evidence files. The more I looked, the more I realized that there were inconsistencies and unanswered questions. But as I delved deeper, I began to notice something strange happening. Doors would creak open on their own, objects would move inexplicably, and I heard whispering voices in the dead of night. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia, but as the occurrences became more frequent and intense, I began to wonder if there was something else at play. One night, as I was going through old photos in the attic, I found a strange box hidden away in a corner. It was covered in strange symbols and emanated a faint energy that made my skin crawl. Without thinking, I opened the box and found a collection of objects: a lock of hair, a dried flower, a cracked mirror. Each one seemed to pulse with a dark energy that I couldn't explain. Suddenly, I heard a voice whispering in my ear, "They're coming for you." Terrified, I slammed the box shut and ran out of the attic, but the voice followed me, taunting me with promises of death and destruction. I knew then that there was something much darker at play than just my husband's crimes. I had stumbled onto something that I couldn't comprehend, something that threatened to consume me completely. But I couldn't back down now. I had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. The clog in our toilet had been just the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt me for the rest of my life. As I sat in my new home, trying to move on from the horrors of my past, I received a strange package in the mail. It was a small box with a note attached, simply saying, "Open at your own risk." Curiosity getting the best of me, I carefully opened the box to find a single piece of paper with a message scrawled in messy handwriting. It read, "You thought it was over, but it's not. There are others like him out there, and they're coming for you." My heart racing, I realized that my nightmare was far from over. I had thought that justice had been served with my husband's conviction, but now it seemed that there were others out there just like him, waiting to prey on innocent victims. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted the authorities and provided them with the evidence I had gathered about my husband's crimes, hoping that it would help them track down the others. But as the days went by, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat, and every sound made me jump. And then one night, I heard a knock at my door. I cautiously opened it to find a stranger standing on my doorstep, his face obscured by shadows. "Come with me," he said in a low voice. "You're in danger." I hesitated, unsure of whether to trust him, but something in his tone convinced me that he was telling the truth. I followed him out of my house and into the night, not knowing what lay ahead. As we walked through the deserted streets, I couldn't help but wonder who this man was and why he was helping me. But before I could ask any questions, we arrived at an abandoned warehouse. Inside, I found a group of people huddled together, all with haunted looks on their faces. They explained to me that they too had been victims of the same group of serial killers, and that they had banded together to fight back. It was a risky plan, but I knew I had to join them. Together, we launched a campaign to expose the truth about these killers and bring them to justice. It wasn't easy, and we faced countless challenges and setbacks along the way. But in the end, our efforts paid off, the killers were caught and brought to trial, and we were able to start rebuilding our lives. Looking back on those dark days, I couldn't help but wonder how different things might have been if I hadn't found that clog in the toilet. It had led me down a path of horror and despair, but it had also given me the strength to fight back against evil. As I sat in my new home, surrounded by the people who had become my family, I knew that I had finally found a sense of peace. The nightmares still haunted me, but I was no longer alone in my fight, and for that, I was grateful. As we thought the nightmare was over, we soon discovered that the rats had caused even more damage than we initially realized. It started with a strange smell emanating from the walls, which we at first thought was just the result of all the rat activity. But the smell only got worse, and soon we realized that there was something else going on. One day, my husband was taking a shower in the bathroom next to our bedroom when he heard a strange noise coming from the wall. He got out of the shower to investigate, and that's when he noticed that the wall was wet, very wet. He called me over to take a look, and together we realized that the rats had chewed through the pipes in the wall, causing a massive leak that was now seeping into our bedroom. We were horrified. We immediately called a plumber, who confirmed our suspicions. The damage was extensive, and it was going to be a costly repair. We couldn't believe that such a small problem had turned into such a huge disaster. As the plumber worked to fix the pipes, we were forced to live in a hotel for several weeks. It was an inconvenience, but we were grateful to be away from the smell and the mess. Finally, the repairs were complete, and we were able to move back into our home, but we couldn't shake the feeling that something else was wrong. The rats had caused so much damage, and we were worried that there might be even more problems lurking beneath the surface. Sure enough, a few months later we started to notice cracks in the walls and ceilings. At first, we thought it was just settling, but the cracks continued to get worse. We called in a contractor who discovered that the rats had chewed through some of the support beams in our home, causing structural damage that was now starting to show. It was devastating news. Our home was in shambles, and it seemed like there was no end in sight, but we refused to give up. We hired a team of experts to assess the damage and come up with a plan to fix it. It was going to be a long and expensive process, but we were determined to get our home back to its former glory. Over the next year, we worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the rats. It was a grueling process, but we were slowly making progress. Bit by bit, our home started to come back together, and eventually, we were able to move back in and start fresh. Looking back on that whole ordeal, it's hard to believe that it all started with a simple clog in the toilet. But we learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate the power of a small problem. It can quickly spiral out of control and lead to unbelievable consequences. We were lucky to have caught it before it was too late, but it's something we'll never forget. As the days went by, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. My husband, too, was acting strange. He seemed distant and distracted, always disappearing into the bathroom for long periods of time. One day, as I was cleaning the house, I heard a loud thud coming from the bathroom. Worried, I rushed in to find my husband slumped over on the floor, unconscious. I quickly called 911, and he was rushed to the hospital. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, and he remained in a coma for weeks. During that time, I delved deeper into the mystery of what had caused the clog in our toilet. I tore apart the pipes and searched every inch of the bathroom, but I couldn't find anything unusual. Finally, in a moment of desperation, I decided to search the one place I had been avoiding, the septic tank. It was a messy and unpleasant job, but I knew I had to do it. As I dug through the muck, I found something that made my blood run cold: a hand. It was small and delicate, unmistakably that of a child. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was this how my husband had gotten sick? Had he contracted some sort of deadly infection from the septic tank? I immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes. They conducted a thorough search of our property and found something even more horrifying: a makeshift burial ground in our backyard filled with the bodies of missing children. As the investigation continued, we learned a shocking truth. My husband was a serial killer. He had been preying on innocent children for years, luring them into our home and then disposing of their bodies in the septic tank and backyard. I was devastated and disgusted by the person I had shared my life with for so long, but I knew I had to be strong for the sake of the children and families who had been affected by his actions. In the end, my husband was sentenced to life in prison. I sold the house and moved away, trying my best to put the horror behind me. But the memories lingered, haunting me at night and making me question everything I thought I knew about the people around me. The clog in our toilet had led to unbelievable consequences, and I could only hope that justice had been served for those whose lives had been taken too soon.